What's going down, everybody? It's your boy, that guy, my high. Tuning back in front of the reaction. This time we got one from the Scary Interesting channel. It's called A Collection of Horrible Fates. Sounds crazy. So yeah, but before we jump into that, we got to give a big shout out to all of our members of the channel, and then we're going to jump into that right after. So Epic Service, Jamal, Keith, Christy Poe, Funny Farm, Manly, Misty Summers, Sniper, Trey 420, Driver Thoughts, Ryan Parks, Kara, Marie, Carrie, Mr. Pay 4, Happy Chick, Lynn Willow, Holla Girl, Taylor, Holla Boy, Marla, Diesel, Nick, Creatively Insane, Nicole, Aaron, Mama Dukes, Robin Lynn, Amy Jane Doe, Lynn, Liz, Nugget, My Hood Life, and Gary Willis, man. Appreciate you guys for being members and rocking with your boy the way that you do. If you guys want to get personal shout outs on all the videos, the lives, take advantage of some perks, go ahead and think about hitting that join button down below. You dig what I'm saying? If not, just free 99 it up, you know? Subscribe, bell notification, you know, like, comment, share, subscribe, all that stuff, you know? It's free 99. Anyways, let's jump into this video, man, and see what's up with this crazy video, because I know it's going to be crazy. Like, a collection of horrible fates sounds awful. Anyways, let's go.
And welcome to Scary Interesting. Today's video covers 3 people who suffered some of the worst fates you can imagine. The final story is a particularly tragic ordeal, so viewer discretion is advised.
You know what I'm saying? My new coffee cup. The Ghostbusters cup.
Yellowstone National Park is a national park in the United States that is famous for its wildlife and for its many geothermal
taken my
features.
kids there too before.
Beneath Yellowstone is something called the Yellowstone Caldera, which is actually the largest volcanic system in all of North America.
Yep.
The magma chamber that is underneath Yellowstone is thought to be a single massive chamber that is 37 miles long, 18 miles wide, and 3 to 7 miles deep. At some point, this chamber is expected to erupt like it has at least 3 times in history and decimate most of North America. This caldera is responsible for much of the geothermal activity.
That shit sounds so fucking terrible, like terrifying and like terrible. Like to even think like, man, one day, you know, Old Faithful or whatever the hell that fucking geyser or whatever they call it is, you know what I'm talking about? Yeah, Old Faithful. Yeah, one day that shit's gonna blow up and just never stop. You know what I'm saying? Like it's gonna be wild. Like that's a crazy thought to even have in your brain. Like
on the surface,
you know?
and manifests as geysers and hot springs. In fact, one of the most famous geysers in the entire world is located here, known as Old Faithful, because it erupts a jet of water every 60 to 90 minutes.
Yep.
The hot springs in the park are warmed by the geothermal activity and can range from lukewarm pools to bubbling cauldrons of steam and boiling water. Most of them are hotter than a very hot bath, and many of them are even hotter at just below boiling, or literally boiling. Yeah. Since 1870, 22 people have died in the park in the hot springs from either accidentally falling in or from carelessness, except for one. On July 20th, 1981, 24-year-old David Allen Kerwin was driving through Yellowstone in an area known as Fountain Paint Pod Thermal Area. This is an area that has a bunch of brightly colored blue, green, and orange hot springs that range from hot to boiling. He was driving with his friend Ronald Ratliff and Ronald's dog, Moosey. At around 1 p.m., they parked in one of the visitor areas so they could get out and check out the colorful hot springs. As they were getting out, Moosey managed to jump out of the truck and took off towards the hot springs and immediately jumped right into a pool known as the Celestine Pool. Moosey immediately started yelping in pain from the water because the Celestine Pool he had jumped into has been measured at just a few degrees below boiling. David and Ronald sprinted over to the pool and got to the edge and called to Moosey, but in his panic, Moosey wasn't able to swim over to them. So, David decided that he couldn't just stand by and let Moosey die, and so he got ready to jump in the water after him. Some other visitors to the park noticed that he looked like he was going to jump in and tried to warn him not to jump because of how hot the water was. But David was determined to save Moosey, and so he brushed them off, took 2 steps back, and then dove in head first into the boiling water. He swam out to Moosey in the almost boiling water, and when he got him, he grabbed him and began swimming back to shore, but before he made it back, he slipped under the water. He ended up having to let go of Moosey and swam back to the edge all alone. When he got to the edge, he was already so weak that he could barely make it out, and Ronald had to help him out. In that brief second helping him out, Ronald even suffered second-degree burns pulling him out of the water. Some other visitors helped David to the...
That shit would be so crazy. Like I said, I've been in Yellowstone I don't want to say so many times. I've been to Yellowstone like 3 or 4 times in my life, like 3 times, and that shit just sounds awful. Like I wouldn't like. There was never a time that I was like, bro, I wonder what it'd like to be like to jump in one of these geysers and shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, no, they're pretty. You know, you always kind of think like, man, if only it wasn't fucking boiling and shit, you know, that'd be a cool swimming hole. You know what I'm saying? Like you make these logical assumptions where it's like, yeah, if that was cold water, you know, maybe lukewarm, that would be an awesome swimming hole. Look at it. It's cool. It's pretty. It's beautiful. But you know that it's not. So it's like not even a thought to think that you're gonna jump in it. And I love my dog. I don't know that I would go jumping in a fucking hot ass pool like that. Like bruh. I ain't gonna lie. I don't know that I would. I don't know that I could. That
reality
I could jump
had
in that
begun
water.
to sink in, and David would even say, quote, "That was stupid. How bad am I? That was a stupid thing I did." Exposure to the boiling water had left David blind and with third-degree burns on 100% of his entire body.
Yeah.
Some of the visitors then tried to help David get his shoes off, and in doing so, most of the skin peeled off of his foot. In fact, skin was peeling off of most of his body.
Probably, yeah.
He was eventually taken to Salt Lake City Hospital, but died the following morning from his burns.
Damn.
Unfortunately, Moosey wouldn't survive either. Although David acted bravely to try to save Moosey, ultimately it was a decision that cost him his life. Yeah. In the history of the park, many of the burns that visitors have gotten have been from saving pets that have accidentally gone into the boiling pools. Because, as beautiful as they are to look at, these pools are just extremely dangerous.
Yep. Yeah, that's the perfect example of like why you should keep your dogs and animals on leashes, even in, you know, national parks and public spaces that in most cases, you know, like I go camping. I get it. You know what I'm saying? Like my dog isn't necessarily always on a leash when we're right at our camp. You know what I'm saying? But I'd say probably 75-80% of the time, we just have him on like a long lead. You know what I'm saying? So he can roam the whole camp by himself. But he's attached to a tree. You know what I'm saying? Like he's not going too far. You dig? But I can't lie and say like there's not times where we might be hiking or, you know, just messing around the camp playing, you know, fetch or something like that I've not let my dogs off of leashes before. But there's no way in hell that if I'm gonna go up like hiking trails where there's like more people and, you know, a public space, other dogs, you know, dangers like, you know, super boiling thermo pits and shit, like, yeah, no, bro, you got to stay on the leash, bro. You know what I'm saying? I don't even want the stress of thinking and knowing that there's a possibility that something could happen to you because you're not on a leash. That's just not even smart, bro. That's not even smart. That's crazy. That just proves the point.
October
like,
11th, 2012, Jose Milena left to go work in Santa Fe Springs, California, where he worked as a maintenance worker for a canned goods food company called Bumblebee Foods. That morning, Jose was going about his day, performing his normal tasks, which included maintenance on one of the large machines in the factory. He walked into a large cylindrical opening of the machine and headed towards the back where the maintenance needed to be done. As he was working, all of a sudden, these giant pallets of tuna cans started rolling into the machine and blocked him at the back of the machine where he was doing the repair. Jose would have likely called out to the person who rolled the pallets in, but because of how loud it was in the factory, they weren't able to hear him. Then, Jose would have heard the horrifying sound of the door of the machine closing.
Oh, no.
What had happened was that his coworkers thought that he had gone to the bathroom and didn't realize he was inside the machine. Not thinking that anyone was in there, they then loaded all of the tuna cans in order to sterilize them. Because the machine that Jose was working on and that his coworkers had just blocked him into was actually a giant pressure cooker. Inside the machine, with the door closed, Jose would have known that there was no way for his coworkers to know that he was in there. Then, even worse than the sound of the door closing, Jose probably would have heard the horrifying sound of the giant industrial oven turning on to sterilize all of the cans blocking him in. Over the next 2 hours, the temperature of the oven went up to 270 degrees and cooked Jose alive. Later on, one of the managers of the factory started asking around about Jose's whereabouts and even made an announcement over the loudspeaker. But it wasn't until the oven was reopened and the tuna was pulled out that they found Jose's body. In the aftermath of the event, Bumblebee Foods agreed to pay $6 million for violating a number of safety rules.
Yeah.
In addition to the fine paid by Bumblebee Foods, 2 managers at the facility were fined $30,000 each for not following procedures that also contributed to Jose's death.
Damn. That's
in
wild.
Colombia,
That
about
like
80 miles.
that shit's like I'm glad they didn't show no pictures, no videos, no extra shit. Like that's terrible, bro. Like a human literally got cooked alive in a giant ass pressure cooker. Like Bruh.
West of the capital city of Bogota, there is a mountain known as the Nevado del Ruiz that stands a staggering 17,500 feet. Nevado del Ruiz is nicknamed the Sleeping Lion because it isn't an ordinary mountain. It is actually a volcano that has been partially dormant since 1845. In 1845, when the volcano last erupted, over 1,000 people were killed in the valleys nearby. Over the years since then, the volcano began to show signs that it might erupt once again. These started off with just some small steam releases and then the occasional tremor, but then in September of 1985, the tremors from the mountain became so powerful that officials started to create evacuation plans for the nearby villages. By October, they had created a hazard map to distribute to the residents to show where debris might land or where lava flows might occur in the event of an eruption. Unfortunately, the map was poorly distributed, and many of the residents in the nearby villages never received anything at all. In particular, there were many high-risk areas that had been constructed in the direct path of potential lava flows because the volcano had been dormant for so long. In one of these nearby villages lived a 13-year-old girl named Omaira Sanchez. Omaira was born on August 28, 1972 in the village of Armero with a population of 31,000 people. She lived with her father, Alvara, who was a rice farmer, her mother, Maria, a nurse, her brother, and her aunt. On November 13th, 1985, about midway through the day, there were a series of long earthquakes that started off strong and then died off very slowly. A volcanologist by the name of Bernard Chouette noticed these earthquakes and tried to alarm his colleagues that these were signs of an eruption. Then, at 9:08 p.m., Nevado del Ruiz erupted, sending rocks and debris more than 30 kilometers into the atmosphere. The eruption created a cloud of superheated gas that melted snow and ice at the summit of the mountain. This then combined with rocks and mud into 4 thick mud flows known as lahars that sped down the mountain into the nearby valleys at around 6 meters per second. Along the way, as they picked up debris, they grew to be 50 meters wide and 2 meters deep. One of these lahars headed straight for Armero. Just before 11:30 p.m., the electrical grid was knocked out in the town and the residents were in complete darkness. Then at 11:30 p.m., a lahar flooded into Armero and covered almost the entire town in a thick layer of mud. Over the next several hours, 2 more waves would sweep into the town, killing over half of the population and destroying most of the buildings in their wake. At some point during this destruction, the home of Omaira Sanchez was struck by a lahar, destroying it instantly and crushing her father and aunt. Omaira survived the initial impact, but the concrete foundation of the home had landed on her, pinning her in place. Even worse, the lahar was mixed with water that left a flood as it passed through, so Omaira was stuck almost neck deep in water. For a variety of reasons, the rescue operation didn't start until a few hours after the town had been struck. This left many of the residents who were still alive trapped under debris.
Look, the fact that he threw this little girl story into this larger story, by all means, I hope that he completes that story and they're like, yeah, they found her. You know what I'm saying? Bro.
Mud in horrible conditions before rescuers started to arrive, including Omaira. Omaira also had debris that had landed around her when her house had collapsed. In the first hours of being stuck, she was able to move some of the debris off of her in order for her to be seen by rescuers when they arrived on scene. When rescuers did find her, it took almost the entire day after the eruption to clear enough debris in order to actually reach her. When they were finally able to reach her, they were able to assess the situation and found that the debris that was pinning her in place was essentially a concrete wall. This made it almost impossible for them to just pull her out of the water without breaking her legs. The first journalist to arrive on the scene described Omaira as being in good spirits much of the time, despite the awful situation that she was in. At times she was scared and cried, but at other times she was hopeful and prayed. As she waited to be rescued, she ate sweet foods and drank soda and would sing to the journalist on scene after agreeing to do some interviews. Over the next day, rescuers tried a bunch of different things to get Omaira out from under the rubble. When they tried just pulling on her, the water splashed around and made it difficult for her to breathe, and so they placed a tire around her to keep her afloat. Divers then went into the water where she was pinned to assess the situation and found that horrifically, before being crushed, her aunt had wrapped her arms around Omaira's legs. They also found that the debris that was pinning her in place would require heavy equipment to be lifted up. On day 3, the effects of gangrene and hypothermia.
They said her aunt wrapped herself around her legs. So that's probably part of the reason why her legs just didn't get crushed and severed off immediately. That's crazy, bro.
What the hell? And Omaira began to hallucinate.
Why did we watch this as the first reaction of the morning? I don't know. This is the first video I recorded today, and this is not a good way to start the day.
On this day, that journalist Frank Fournier arrived in Armero to conditions much worse than he could have ever imagined. Many of the people who had been trapped on day 1 were still trapped 2 days later. Instead of an organized and fluid rescue, he arrived to chaos and desperation. There were just so many people trapped and so much debris and so few resources that rescuers couldn't reach many of them. On top of that, there just weren't enough rescuers. Most of them were either civil defense workers or Red Cross volunteers. The Colombian government was criticized in the aftermath of the event for its poor response to the disaster. Some reports show that none of Colombia's 100,000-person army or 65,000-person police force were dispatched to join the rescue.
What?
But the government claims that the conditions were simply too difficult to reach the town in time. They lacked the resources and equipment to mobilize effectively across the vast swaths of mud that stretch for miles across the flooded towns. On the 3rd day, as Frank walked through the chaos, he was greeted.
That shit is some fucking... That's some clown shit, Colombia. Come on, bro. You got drug dealers that got entire fucking fleets of planes and ways to get tons and tons and tons of narcotics and drugs and shit out of your country into other countries. Like, let's be fucking real about this, bro. You could have called anybody. You could have called on the hey, man, we need to use some of them planes, man. You know what I'm saying? We're going to turn our head one more time. You come help us with this time. You know what I'm saying? We're going to turn our head. You know what I'm saying? You come bring them planes. Like, come on, bro. Y'all could have did anything.
A farmer who asked for his help and led him to an unknown location. When Frank arrived, he was met with the sight of 13-year-old Omaira Sanchez trapped in the rubble. As her condition worsened, her face had swelled, her hands had whitened, and her eyes had turned a deep red. It was on this day that doctors determined that in order to free her, they would need to amputate her legs, but because they lacked the necessary equipment for her to survive a double amputation, it was ultimately decided that the most humane option was to let her die. And so, at approximately 10:05 a.m. on November 16th, roughly 60 hours after being trapped, Omaira Sanchez passed away from either gangrene or hypothermia. Shortly before her death that morning, Frank...
Bruh. What? That is the saddest shit ever. I don't even want to watch this no more. Man.
Took this haunting picture as a way of reporting her courage and her suffering in her horrible 3-day ordeal. Omaira's brother would survive the incident, and her mother, who was away on business at the time of the disaster, tragically received the news of her daughter's death during a radio interview. In total, over 23,000 people were killed, 13 villages were destroyed, and the Nevado del Ruiz eruption remains the worst natural disaster in Colombia's history. If you made it this far, I just wanted to thank you for watching and invite you to watch the other videos on my channel that I think you'll enjoy.
That was deep, bro. That last video, that last one, like, they all sucked. They all were just like, wow, like, no, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, they were all some horrifying situations for sure. Excuse me, but that last one though, bro, that shit's terrible. Like, old girl fought for 3 days, bro. That is a strong ass 13-year-old. Like, 3 days? That little girl fought. That's terrible. Anyways, man, y'all let me know what you thought about that down in the comments below. That was a very intense video to start the day off. I ain't gonna lie. All right, I'll catch y'all later. Peace.